Hello and welcome back to the Hardwood Hoops podcast. Surprisingly, this is episode 50 of the podcast. I'm joined as always by my co-host, Mr. Ben Jones. How are you doing?
Oh, we've done it. We've got to 50. It's an incredible feat. I'd like to thank everyone I know for getting me here. Hello.
Yeah, we hit a 50 spot, so we're 50 off 100. Good maths, quick maths.
Big maths, half century. Here we go.
Yeah, I know. We've been doing this for probably about 8 months, maybe 7 months.
Yeah.
Got into 50 episodes, so probably going to average about 75 episodes a year at this rate, which is good. Not quite the level of other podcasts, but good going, I think.
Yeah. Well, some maybe overdo it. We've discussed off air, but who knows?
Yeah, we're struggling to keep up with daily NBA pods. I think they're a little bit too much for us at the moment with busy lives. But yeah, this is episode 50. Crazy to be here. Obviously, thanks to Ben for being on probably 45 of the 50 episodes together. I'd probably say so far.
Yeah. Well, you deserve all the thanks, mate. You're the engine of this ship. Keep us going.
Oh God, like the Titanic. Here we come. Yeah, and also kind of wanted to mention big thanks to a couple of people for getting us here as well. So Rich Barrett from NBA UK Fans, he's kind of championed us before many times on Twitter, and he always shares our stuff and gets involved with the Saturday lives they do. So big thanks to Rich. Dan Healy helped us set up the podcast originally as well from Miami Heat UK. So big thanks to Dan. And then Stuart Cruikshank and Phil Tomlinson, they did our artwork and our intro music as well. So without those kind of four guys, we would have been a little bit further back than we are now. So yeah, big thanks to those four. And big thanks to Ben for putting up with me talking about Luka Doncic and Carmelo Anthony every week.
I pay you back by talking about LeBron, so we're even.
Oh, I've heard that for too many years. So plan for the podcast, we're going to go through our usual segment of winners and losers to kick it off. We're going to end with our best upcoming games for the next week. So some games that we're kind of excited about and talk about. And I'll give you an update where we are on our prediction standings. And then in the middle, though, because this is episode 50 and special one, we're going to talk a bit about Semi-Pro, the film starring Will Ferrell that me and Ben irrationally love. And we're going to do some player comparisons, comparing the players in that film to either current or ex-NBA players. So should be a good one. But let's kick it off with winners and losers, mate. On a positive note, then, why don't you go through your first winner of the week?
Okay, my first winner of the week solidified themselves with 2 huge wins and 1 cancelled game. It's my home team. It's the Cavs. Beating the Nets back-to-back and a cancelled game against the Wizards, which I'm going to assume they would have won. They are playing extremely well at the moment. So they are my winners, my first winner of this week.
Yeah, 3 wins in a row for the Cavs. I think Garland's been out as well. I know that for all 3 of those games, and Colin Sexton's had to kind of lead the team to victory. What are your thoughts on Sexton at the moment? He's playing incredibly well.
Yeah, more sex, less land at the moment, and it seems to be benefiting the Cavs for whatever reason. It's been a funny time for them at the moment, with obviously the trade getting Jarrett Allen, which he showed his worth in the most recent game against Brooklyn, played really, really well. Came away with 19 points and 6 rebounds. And that seemed to be the theme of the most recent game against the Nets. They seem to just bully them. They're just too big. Andre Drummond, pod fave, 19 and 16. They were just, bullying them, basically. Just doing what they want on the balls. Larry Nance Jr. got 15 and 10. It's some unbelievable stat lines they're putting up. So, fair play to the Cavs there. Beating out 3, well, I guess KD's not played this one, but so 2 massive superstars in Harden and Kyrie. And incredibly, Kyrie has come back and just absolutely been balling as well. He's played so well, especially if you look at some of his highlights. Some of the shots he's taken and taken with confidence are just incredible. He is a hell of a player. Like him or love him, you cannot fault his basketball prowess.
I agree. In the first game, the double overtime game, it was the first game with KD Harden and Kyrie all together. The game that I'm going to call him Sexland. The game that Sexton scored, I think it was 20 points back to back in the overtime. I think it was like 147, 135. That had all 3 stars in, and you still won that game, even though like KD played 50 minutes, which is a bit ridiculous, by the way. I know he looks healthy, but I would not be playing someone off an Achilles injury 50 minutes, even if you want to win that game, because, like we said before, they're the sort of team that will get enough wins. They're going to be in the top 6 seeds quite easily, we think. And then it's all about playoff time. You don't want to kind of wear your best players out too early. So I did think that was a bit strange, but that was a hell of a win. And it's quite interesting to see James Harden definitely become more of the kind of passer in the team, I guess.
He seems to be the facilitator. He's gone back to that role he had a couple of seasons ago in Houston, where he was kind of the point guard, which I think, personally, I love that style for Brooklyn, because Kyrie is a good passer, but he is a better scorer in terms of he can go inside and shoot. And for Harden to just sort of pass from the perimeter is perfect, because he can always get it kicked back out to him and shoot. I think it's a really good setup for them.
It is, but it's not a good enough setup to beat the mighty Cleveland Cavaliers, like you said. So before we move on to the next one, I want to ask you a question. Can the Cavaliers finish in the top 10 to be guaranteed a place, at least in the play-in tournament? Or can they also finish in the top 6 and be guaranteed a playoff place? What are your thoughts as a Cavs fan going on this bit of a high so early in the season?
No, I don't think it's going to hold. They're playing incredibly well. They're 8-7, and you look at some of the teams below them currently, and you think the Hawks should pick up, Brooklyn should pick up. Then it's the Knicks in 8.
The Heat and Raptors as well, aren't they? Outside that top 10, that you'd like to think would heat up to a point.
And you never know, Washington might find some form at some point in the season and start climbing the ranks. From a realistic standpoint, I don't think they can hold this form. Because especially lately, Chaddy Osman has been incredible. He's played so well, really consistent, and his shooting has improved so much. Because before, he was a real good sort of slasher with the ball and could make a quick move to the rim, and was quite athletic. But his shooting's really improved now, which is great. I was reading somewhere that maybe they might think about Kevin Love coming off the bench now and using this starting unit that they've got working well together at the moment. Keep Larry Nance in the starting lineup. I personally just think they need to move on from Love. I think they need to find a suitor for him. But and that's the other side of it. Although they are playing really well at the moment and are quite high up in the standings, do I want them to stay there is the other question.
Yeah, maybe not.
No, because it's going to be quite a strong draft next year, and with letting some players go recently, they need to fill some roster gaps with some young talent. So I would be looking for them to sort of slide down the rankings slowly in the next few months.
Who knows? They could finish in that 10 seed and have a playing game. We shall see. Cool. Well, we'll go on to my first winner of the week. I think we've got one or two the same, so I know we haven't got this one the same. So I'll start with this one. Oh. I've gone with my team, the Dallas Mavericks. Two wins in a row. What's kind of more impressive is the teams they play. So the Pacers, who are second in the East, and the Spurs, who have had a really strong start to the season again, especially defensively. They managed to kind of win both those games. They won the Pacers game quite convincingly, with Luka not really on his best form in terms of scoring. He was more of a facilitator that night, which I found impressive. Luka in general last night against the Spurs was on real MVP form. I think he was 36, 9 and 11, which is really impressive.
Wow.
Yeah, he played really, really well last night. He played really well against the Pacers, but like I said, it was more a facilitator role. The amount of times, seems to be a new set they've got, where Porzingis is in the corner for a three, then Luka drives, and they always think that Luka's going to score first, and that KP's kind of just going to stand out on the three, but KP follows him in for a dunk. They did that 5 times against the Pacers, and they did that 3 times last night. So I think it's a new thing they're working on, with Porzingis kind of getting around the rim for easy dunks, which makes sense. So he doesn't have to just shoot 10 threes every game.
Yeah, and he is absolutely huge. So why is he needs to be utilised?
Yeah, well, second biggest player in the NBA, I think. But yeah, so they're up to 7th in the standings. They kind of go on these 2 or 3 winning game runs and then 2 or 3 game losing streaks. But they've done this without Max Kleber. They've done it without Josh Richardson. They've done it without Dorian Finney-Smith, and they've only had Jalen Brunson for 2 of the last 6 games as well. So they've been decimated by injuries. They're still in 7th. I know we kind of wanted them to finish 3rd or 4th in the West. That was where we saw their ceiling. And they're only 1 game back from 4th at the moment with the awful run of injuries and COVID-related issues. So I think when they get Josh Richardson back, that they'll only improve. We'll talk about it later, but they've got a big week this week with a couple of games against the Jazz. So, yeah, they've been a winner of the week for me. Luka's looking back to true MVP form, and I like to see Porzingis playing as well as he is. So, yeah, the man for my first team.
Nice.
Who's your second team?
Second team I've got, which I imagine will be on your list, is the Utah Jazz. They are currently on a 7-game winning streak and are playing ridiculously well. They've really knitted together well this season, and are just playing as a real team. Although Donovan Mitchell is the sort of the leader and the standout player, everybody on that roster has been sort of stepping up and filling their roles and just doing what the team needs. And it's obviously working for them because, like I said, they're on a 7-game winning streak.
Yeah, coming off 2 big wins against the Pelicans in one of the mini series. I'm looking forward actually to watching them play the Warriors game I've got marked this week, and I'll probably see them a lot this week with the 2 games against the Mavs. So I'll be interested to see kind of how good they are against those elite Western Conference teams.
Yes.
Because I know they've done well against the Nuggets. I watched that game a couple of weeks ago, and that was last Monday. They did really well in that game, and Donovan Mitchell played really well. But I'd just like to see them a little bit more because they've surprised me, actually. I thought they were going to be a bit lower down than they are, but they've been one of the most impressive teams so far. And they weren't actually on my list. I took them off my list, but for me, they're probably one of the most informed teams in the league at the moment. And if they can beat the Warriors and Knicks in the next 2 games, they're probably going to be right up there in the top of the standings, chasing that 1 seed. So, fair play to the Jazz and any Jazz fans out there.
See, I think you might have found as well, especially doing like picks that we've been doing for the podcast. I'm always quite high on the Jazz before the season starts, and always think they're going to do really well. And
yes, you are.
I'm sure every season they have a run like this where you're like, oh my god, they've won like 8 in a row. They're incredible. And then they'll like go on a 5-game losing streak and just sort of vanish into the middle of the pack, and you don't really talk about them till the playoffs again.
Mm-hmm.
So they really need to keep this form going and keep this consistency up, basically.
Yeah,
that's what you need from the Jazz for now. Just keep it where it is, keep the bar set.
Before we move on, we probably can't talk about the Jazz and not talk about this. Did you see the interview between Shaq and Donovan Mitchell?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your initial thoughts on that? Because I've seen some people obviously hate the interview, and I've seen a couple of people maybe who work for certain companies, I'll say, that have links to Shaq that are saying that, oh, this is just the way that Shaq motivates players, and Shaq doesn't care about Donovan Mitchell. For me, like, he's not motivating him; he's just being a bit of an idiot, and the interview's just rubbish. And I love their show, but I think sometimes they kind of go above their station and they speak to people almost not like humans at times. It's very weird. KD has a big issue with all those guys as well, and now Donovan Mitchell also. So for me, I didn't like it. But where do you stand on the matter?
I found it very weird as well. Like you said, I'm a big fan of that show, and I love those 4 guys. But that was a weird comment to make. I don't understand why he went at him like that. Like, he didn't need to do it, and obviously Donovan Mitchell felt exactly the same. Like, I'm playing really well at the moment. Our team's playing really well at the moment. Why are you coming at me like that? Like, I don't need motivation from you. Mm-hmm. You've retired 6 years or whatever. Why?
Yeah.
What do you know? Like 2 weeks ago, you didn't even know who one of the Houston player you were interviewing was. What relevance do you have for me?
Yeah, which that interview itself is worse. And obviously the KD one as well, where KD just answers in 1 word earlier in the season. I think there's just been time after time now. I think they really need to work on their relationship with these non-star players.
Yeah.
I know Luca enjoyed his interview on there, but they were also kind of taking the mick out of him, and there's obviously his lack of knowledge about American culture and stuff. But I just think that they're fun, but when they try and become too serious, they need to be serious in the right moments and use their platform to talk about basketball, like they did when Draymond Green was on. But they don't need to kind of try and interrogate players and try and get these soundbite clicks. I think it's a weird way. I hope the show kind of doesn't just go that way forever. I hope they lean back towards their roots, which is a bit more fun and a little bit more true basketball rather than just trying to get clicks.
Yeah, definitely. They did it with Jokic as well. Because was it Shaq or Chuck said, I thought you were from Russia. Like that. It sounds silly, but that could be really offensive to some people.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, especially
if you're
the player himself.
Yeah, if you have a pride and a passion about the country you're from, and someone's like, "Oh, I just assumed you were from Russia," like.
Yeah, when you work for a company who do the research, like all the stats they have for the games and stuff, like you can just work out where he's from, or you know where he's from, and you're just saying that to get a click. So
yeah,
I think that hopefully these interviews kind of improve and this stops happening. But yeah, I'm not sure. They're letting themselves down because as a couple of hosts, especially Kenny as well, I think that the other two at the moment are letting them down a little bit for me. But we'll see how that goes. And I feel sorry for Donovan Mitchell. I'm glad that they won to kind of shut him up, which is good.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, my next team that I replaced the Jazz with, because I knew you had them, was the Clippers. They lead the West with a 12-4 record overall. I think they're on a 6-game winning streak at the moment. Offensively, they look really, really good. Tyler's got them drilled. The ball movement is a lot better than it has been in the past. And I know the last couple of games they've kind of beaten lower teams in the West with the Kings and the Thunder, but you've got to beat who's in front of you, which I think they're really good at the moment, and they're not having these streaks of games like some of the other teams where, like the Nets, for example, where you lose to a team that you probably shouldn't lose to. The Clippers seem to be just doing the business in the games they should win, and maybe their issue is against the top tier teams that they haven't played in a couple of weeks. Really, I think the Warriors are the only one they've played in the last few weeks. You'd think are even a playoff team at the moment, and they lost one of the games and won one of the games. But aside from that, they're beating the teams they should beat. The offense looks good. Paul George, who we've spoken about before, is having a really good start to the season. And Kawhi is always going to be Kawhi. So yeah, I wanted to mention them because they lead the West at the moment, and we always talk about the Lakers. The Lakers are the best team. They've got the best defensive and offensive ratings in the league, but the Clippers are right up there again like they were last year, and they'll probably be within 5 games of them most of the season, you'd think. So yeah, shout out to the Clippers for me.
Yeah, I've got the Clippers on my winners list as well. They beat the Pacers, who we spoke about last week, who are really on form at the moment, although they might have taken a slight dip recently. So that wasn't an easy game to win. And then, like you said, you've got to win what's in front of you. And this is the time where the great team should capitalise, is these in quotation marks, easier games, these winnable games. Mm-hmm. If you're not winning those during the regular season, then you need to stop caring about your placement and then just focus on the playoffs. Whereas if you do want some sort of home court advantage, this is when you put your marker down. Make these teams not want to come and play you by beating them and blowing them out. And then the Clippers seem to be doing that at the moment. So, yeah, fair play to the Clippers.
Yeah, definitely. Their bench has been a little bit better than I thought as well. Luke Kennard and Marcus Morris. I'm not the biggest Marcus Morris fan. I don't think anyone who likes Luka Doncic is the biggest Marcus Morris fan, but him and Luke Kennard have been scoring well off the bench, which I think helps when you've got those two stars in the starting lineup if you can kind of spread your points around. Do you see them being the main contender at the moment for the Lakers long term in the West, with just the way they're playing and the way they're set up, or you think that they're going through a bit of vein and form and maybe there's other teams that can pose a bigger test long term?
No, I still have the Lakers and the Clippers as the upper echelon of teams, especially in the West. And that's, I guess it's still kind of what we want to see in that Western Conference final, those two teams going at it. And to be honest, I don't know if I could call it at this moment in time. Both teams playing well. Mm-hmm. Both sort of stars playing consistently. It's nice to see Paul George stepping up as the leader of that team. We said all last season they needed someone to do that. And Paul George seems to be the man, because I don't think Kawhi is. And I just think that's him. We know he's quite quiet, but I think that's when he operates best, kind of when the limelight isn't on him, and he can just play basketball. So Paul George needs to sort of take that mantle on, and those guys that talk too much have seemed to have been a bit more quiet this season, taken a step back, which I think has also really helped them. Not just playing, but I think it's helped them in terms of their appearance and their media presence, because they weren't looking great in the playoffs.
No, they've gone about their business quite quietly and efficiently, haven't they? And just winning games, which I think is sort of a Kawhi sort of style, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I feel a little bit sorry for Paul George, because all eyes are already on the playoffs, in terms of they're saying, oh, great, you can do it in the regular season, but let's see you in the playoffs. Well, I just think that is true, but also the regular season does matter to a point. And they do want to get good seeding like they did last year. I said all along, as a Mavs fan, I didn't want to play the Clippers because they were the worst team, and they got a good enough record that meant they did play the Mavs, and that's what you have to do as a good team. Even if you don't win the West, you still have to be like, right, let's finish in second at least, so we get the best matchup we can get, and then we go on from there. I just think that Paul George is at least kind of showing that leadership in the regular season. And then when it comes to the playoffs, we'll see how it goes. Cool. The last thing on my list then, because you had the Clippers as well, was the 76ers. They lead the East at the moment with an 11-5 record. They're above the Bucks, which is a little bit shocking for us, because I know we had the Celtics and Bucks leading. I know it's early, but the 76ers look at the standout team at the moment. They've won their last two games with a huge win last night, I think, against the Celtics. And I kind of want to talk about them and Embiid together. So Embiid looks like a real MVP candidate. He's 38 and 11 last night. I think he'd missed 2 shots up to the fourth quarter. So he's really efficient. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on the 76ers and Embiid as an MVP candidate at the moment?
I think we mentioned it before, but it's the first time in recent memories with this Embiid and Simmons lineup where they've made moves to fit the team. They've got some shooters in the off-season, and they've got a backup centre for Embiid so they can rest him when they need to. They've got Ben Simmons sort of playing the kind of peripheries almost, and he's passing and assisting and getting rebounds and steals and just being athletic. You look at his stats and they're not jump out the gym absolutely crazy, but they're consistent, and he's almost sort of on a triple-double nearly every time you look at a box score. They're just really clicking as a team. Whether that is more, like I said, the roster suited to them, or this coaching change and this culture change has really benefited them, I don't know what it is, but everything seems to be clicking for them at the moment, and it's really good to see.
Yeah, his Ben Simmons' defensive stats are incredible as well at the moment, and I know he was getting a little bit of stick for kind of not scoring enough, but he went absolutely crazy in the fourth quarter last night when they beat the Celtics, so that was a huge win for them. And yeah, like I said, Embiid just looks like a true MVP candidate, and the only kind of downside of this season, I think they're going to be spoken about in terms of Harden quite a lot. Like, should they have done the Harden trade? If they lose a few games or Embiid goes out injured for a week or whatever, there'll always be like, should they have done the Harden trade? So I think that I'm glad that they're playing so well, and I hope they keep it up to kind of just say, look, yes, Harden was an option, but we like our team. Doc Rivers has got the team that he wants, so we're just going to kind of run with it. And I hope that the fact they didn't trade for Harden just won't be a constant storyline. So I'm glad they're willing to kind of put that to the back of the news. It's good.
Yeah, definitely. And with the way Simmons is playing and the way the team is playing, he doesn't need to score in a massive amount. He's averaging 12, 8 and almost 9 rebounds. And you got Tobias Harris, who's scoring 19 and a half. Joel Embiid's averaging 27. Seth Curry's averaging 16. You got Shake Milton, who's averaging 16 points. And Tyrese Maxey coming off the bench, giving you 10. He doesn't need to be scoring 20 a night. He needs to be setting these guys up, getting the rebounds. He kind of does all the dirty work on the team, and he's really good at it as well.
Yeah, definitely. And his defensive rating is the best in the NBA at the moment. So that's kind of his game. And they're a very good defensive team, and he's the leader of that. So I just think that he really suits the style that they play, and almost the way that Doc likes to run his teams. He's a little bit more of a defensive coach. So I think it's just a good fit all around. Cool. Well, let's go on to losers of the week then. Why don't you kick us off again? Start us off with your first loser of the week, mate.
I've got a star-studded lineup for my loser of the week this week. Most of my top teams in the East. So let's start with my top team in the East, the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, they were on my list as well.
Yeah, 0-3 this week. They do not like playing the 76ers whatsoever. Have they lost every game against them this season so far? I think they might.
Yeah, and they had a losing record against them last season as well.
Yeah, they seem to be a real kryptonite for Boston. I thought when Jaylen Brown came back from injuries and Tristan Thompson came back, they've got Kemba Walker's back. I was thinking, okay, things are going to sort of pick up from here and everybody's going to be playing well. I know Kemba's going to be on limited minutes and he'll be eased back into the team, but it's not been going great for them. I know Tatum's out at the moment as well, and he seems to be the kind of glue that's holding this Boston team together at the moment. They need to find a way to win without him.
Yeah, they really struggle, don't they, on the offensive end when he doesn't play. I think Jaylen Brown scored like 45 points yesterday against the 76ers, but overall it's just not enough. They miss Tatum so much, and I think Tatum's probably actually underrated offensively because they've got a lot of bigs. Well, they haven't. They've got a lot of young bigs and Tristan Thompson. They've got loads of guards, but they haven't got many people that can guard wing players because they kind of put it all on Brown and Tatum. So if Tatum's not there, they haven't got a lot of depth behind him, which is a bit of a worry, I think.
Yeah, and you just got to look at the caliber of teams they lost to. It wasn't just the 76ers who have an amazing record at the moment, but they lost to the Knicks the other night, 105-75. That wasn't just a slight loss. That was a pasting from the Knicks, of all people.
Yeah, Tristan Thompson not looked as good as me and you have thought as well. We were really high on that signing, and I think in the playoffs he'll be a little bit more key, which is good. But we've got to look at the regular season, and they've really struggled. And they're known for being good defensively, but yeah, and like I said, that Knicks win, for example, you're giving up 29 points to Quickly and Toppin, two rookies off the bench that are only playing like 20 minutes a game, 15 minutes a game, and that's just not the hallmark of a Brad Stevens team, is it? So I think they've got to really work on that defensive end, and Joel Embiid seems to kill them every time they play. So yeah, they were on my list as well, and I think we've kind of said all we can say about them. They're not looking like the winners of the East, like you thought before the season.
No, they've really taken a turn.
Cool. Well, who's your second team then from your star-studded lineup on the losers?
My number 2 pick of the East at the beginning of the season, the Milwaukee Bucks. 0-2 this week with one game postponed, which was against the Wizards last night. They lost to the Lakers before that, which, yeah, that's a tough game. That's a real sort of marquee matchup, isn't it? With Embiid and LeBron. But then before that, they lost to the Nets. Again, marquee matchups. That's some tough games there. They've had a really sort of tough week of it, and they need to find a way to turn this around. So I just think it's, like I said, a bad week for them. They've had tough opposition, and they need to pull themselves out of this hole.
Yeah, I think when they play these tougher teams, we get little bits of little glimpses of what they're like in the playoffs in these big games. Their offense does seem to stall in the fourth quarter. In both those games we're talking about, you've got Chris Middleton taking like contested shots down the stretch of fourth quarter games because Giannis isn't a fourth quarter player. He doesn't want to be fouled because he's not the best free throw shooter, so he doesn't want to kind of be fouled around the perimeter. And teams pack the paint, and it ends up being Middleton trying to win you games. And we both think Middleton's a number 3 option on the team. Some people will disagree and say he's number 2, which is fine, but I think it's safe to say when you're playing the Nets and the Lakers, who've got AD and LeBron, and I think they didn't have Kyrie, but they had Harden and KD. I know which of those players I want taking the shot least out of those 6 stars. It's Middleton, but he has to do it just because of the way the Bucks offense works. So I think that it's something we've spoke about time and time again in the playoffs, isn't it? And it does kind of only show up in the big games in the regular season. I just think that they've got a tough game coming up against the Hawks, and then they've got the Raptors, Pelicans, Hornets. They need to try and get on a bit of a roll, I think, to get back on track.
That's where I think that if it had gone through, that signing of Bogdanovic would have made a real difference to them. just having an additional option in that fourth quarter moment, because everybody knows Giannis isn't going to shoot it, or we'll pack the paint and we'll stop him. And then everybody knows, okay, the backup option is Middleton. So there's no surprises with the Bucks. And I think having someone like Bogdanovic would have been that spark, that game changer. We've seen how many sort of game-winning shots and stuff he can put in for a team. So I really think they've dropped the ball there by not being able to do what they can to finish that for whatever reason. So
yeah, I agree. I think they need to work on this offense in big moments. We'll have to see if they do it. Because they don't, I think this could be the coaches last year, and because they're definitely in the title-winning window, aren't they? They want to win that title now, so I think that they need to turn their fortunes around. Okay, well, let's go on to my next team then. That's not on your list. This is another Eastern Conference team, but it's not a star-studded team. It's the Charlotte Hornets. They're sitting with a 6-9 record, I believe. They've got 4 losses in a row, and they've dropped from, I think they were the 7th seed when we did our second weekly pod, and now we're doing our 4th weekly pod. They're down to 13th in the Eastern Conference. And I guess defense, mate, is where I kind of start. They're giving up, I think, 3rd highest points in the league at the moment. They're really struggling in terms of stopping other teams. And I also just think they need to start LaMelo Ball and kind of just commit to say that we're not going to be a playoff team. Or even if we are, I think we need to play LaMelo more minutes. We need to play him in high leverage situations, and we need to stop this Rozier, Devontae Graham backcourt for me. What are your thoughts on the Hornets as a team?
Yeah, that's the way I thought it was going to go. They were just going to commit to LaMelo and kind of embrace this younger culture and rebuilding kind of thing. But then Rozier came out and dropped a load of points game after game. And I think it's really messed with their heads and their system and what they want out of this team now. Mm-hmm. For me, maybe now could be a good chance to kind of shop Rozier around. He's playing really well. Teams could use a backup point guard. I know he's on quite a hefty contract, I think, that he signed with the Hornets, so maybe it's a difficult one to move. But I agree. I think they need to commit to LaMelo and find a sort of core couple of players they want to build around and create a future around. I know they've got Gordon Hayward, but for me, he's kind of like a locker room guy. He's still an incredible player, don't get me wrong, but he's there to guide them and show them how an NBA player should act and should work and create a good team ethic and atmosphere, more so than win them games. And I don't know, it's turning into classic Hornets, isn't it? A very confused roster.
Yeah, quick shout out to PJ Washington, because he's very high up in most metrics now for offensive and defensive players, for players under the age of 25. So he's playing really well in a team that's struggling. So they've got a couple of pieces there. I just think, like you said, they need to kind of utilise how they play them and just accept that even if we lose this season, we'll get a good draft pick and the players will develop. I think they need to accept that for this year. Cool. Well, who's your last team then on your losers list?
Last team on my losers list is a team that everybody has fairly highly on their Eastern Conference list, and that is the Brooklyn Nets. If you've lost twice to the Cavs in 1 week, you're a loser, right? Especially if you have 3 All-Stars on your roster. All right, one of them didn't play in the second game, but you're playing the Cavs. I mean, come on. I know it's a new roster and they're all getting used to playing with each other, but realistically, like we said with Utah on the flip side and the Clippers on the flip side, they are playing and winning these games that they should be winning. And the Nets need to be doing the same. Otherwise, they might struggle when it comes to the playoffs. Yeah,
I agree. I think we've seen already how good this team's going to be offensively, and the worries that everyone had with them defensively have come to fruition, I think, with how many points they've given up just against your Cavs, like you said. But yeah, I didn't put them on my list. I think it's still early. it's not great to lose the Cavs back to back, I guess. But as a Cavs fan, you should be not putting them on the list because you know how great the Cavs are. Championship winning roster there, all the centers, just dominating the games with bigs. Love it.
It's dominating. Maybe Brooklyn want to trade to have one back.
Yeah, well, I've got a friend on 2K who's already traded for Jarrett Allen. He's a Nets fan, so that kind of shows you their thoughts on their situation with their bigs at the moment. But yeah, no, I can't argue what you said. It's not a great week for them in terms of results, even though they did beat the Bucks earlier in the week. They just need to kind of develop this roster and hope that the big three get a little bit more playing time and practice time together and see how we roll. Cool. Well, my last team, like I said, is not the Nets. It is a team we spoke about last week, unfortunately. It's the Minnesota Timberwolves. They've not had a good week again. I couldn't really just take them off the list. I just think that they're still really struggling at the moment. In terms of standings in the Western Conference, they are where they were before, rock bottom. 3rd and 11 record at the moment. They've lost 4 games in a row in total. I think they've lost 2 or 3, is it this week? They've lost 3 games this week to the Magic, Hawks, and Hawks again. And the Hawks themselves, defensively, have been a nightmare, and the Timberwolves haven't broken 100 points against any of those 3 teams, any of those 3 games. So offensively, they're looking not as good as we thought, but like we said last week, they're still probably the worst or one of the worst defensive teams in the league, which doesn't help if you're not breaking 100 points in games offensively. And they just look like the worst team in the West for me, mate. Unfortunately, at the moment, I think they're going to really struggle. And the issue, like we said last week, is that if they get in the draft lottery and the pick ends up being number 4 or 5 or 6, then the Warriors will get that pick and they won't even benefit from tanking. So, yeah, not a great week again for the Timberwolves.
It's the offense that worries me with the Timberwolves, because you look at the team and you go, okay, I can give them that they're not going to be a great defensive team this season, but they should be a really good offensive team. And they're not. There's a highlight from the most recent game against the Hawks, which I think sort of summarizes their issues. If I was to ask you, what is Trae Young best at? What was his standout thing that he is really good at?
I'd probably say passing, to be honest.
Passing.
I don't think he's as good 3-point shooter as what people think, but a lot of people would say shooting, and that's not been as good as you think.
So, passing or shooting, you want a defender to be playing up on Trae Young and make him take you on the dribble and try and drive in, right? There's a highlight from whenever it was they played, where Trae Young steps up to the 3-point line. There's 3 Timberwolves defenders around him, and all 3 sink in. And Trae Young physically has time to look around, shrug his shoulders, and take a 3-pointer. And it's like,
uncontested
how would you not put a body on?
Yeah, it highlights everything you see. Like, I even saw, I can't remember who it was now, maybe a Clint Capella stat line the other day, and the amount of open dunks he was getting against them was just crazy. I just think they're really bad defensively, and Ryan Saunders, that's their coach. I think he's going to be gone very soon. He could be the first coach fired. If we put bets on that, I think that both of us would be looking at him as a first coach fired candidate.
Whoa, that's a good prediction.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen. Cool. Well, that's our winners and losers for this week then. Like we said at the start, this is episode 50. So we've got a little special segment in the middle that's not related much to true basketball. But me and Ben have loved the film Semi-Pro. It's one of the reasons we grew even closer as friends at secondary school, because we used to watch and talk about this movie and shout random quotes during basketball games in secondary school when we played together. And it's a movie close to our hearts, so we thought, why not include it in episode 50? And when we get to episode 100, we'll probably do a different Semi-Pro segment. It's going to be a staple of the pod. So Ben, why don't you kind of talk about the idea that we've got for this segment and kick us off with your first answers?
Well, what we're going to do is to get the crowds in. We're going to create an arena in the middle of our arena, and we're going to invite a bear into there called Dewey, and we're going to wrestle a bear.
Let's go.
In the Mega Bowl. No, what we thought we'd do is we'd take the roster from the Flint, Michigan Tropics, from the movie, and we would try and find NBA comparisons to those players, whether that be current or past NBA players. And we kind of have to justify why we think this is the best comparison. And then maybe we can put it up to a vote on the Twitter and see who came out with the best comparisons for each player.
Cool. Sounds good.
So I don't know if you want to kick us off with one of yours, or shall I go in with one of mine?
Which player do we want to start with? Do we want to start with the better player, the more famous players on the roster, or are we going to start at the bench of the roster?
Let's start top end. Let's start with the main man, Jackie Moon.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll go first then because I've got a good one for Jackie Moon
Okay.
in relation to this podcast. So for Jackie Moon, my player comparison is no other than Carmelo Anthony.
Wow.
The reasons for the comparison: two of my favourite players of all time. I've got a jersey for both of them hung up in my man cave. One that Ben actually bought me as a present, my Jackie Moon jersey. In terms of playing style, they both live in the post. Anyone who's watched the movie seen Jackie Moon try and receive the ball in the post multiple times. I'd say they're both 2-point specialists, and they're not really as known for their 3-game back in the day. And the other link they have is they both hate the Nets. Carmelo Anthony hated the Nets when he played for the Knicks. He scored many points and won many games for the Knicks when they played the Nets at this time. And Jackie Moon in the movie also hates the Nets because they're chosen to go up into the NBA when Flint, Michigan Tropics are chosen not to go up to the NBA. So, yeah, my first comparison was none other than Carmelo Anthony, Jackie Moon, post players, and two of my favourite players. Who's your Jackie Moon comparison?
There's a hell of a comparison there. I did not see Carmelo being the Jackie Moon comparison. I love that. Very good. Okay, my player comparison. There's one main reason why I picked this player. So it's a past player called Rick Barry. Now, I didn't know much about Rick Barry till I did this little bit of research. He played about 10 or 11 seasons in the NBA. Was a very, very good player. But there was one facet of his game, his best facet of his game, that
I know what it is.
we didn't get to see very often, especially in the movie with Jackie Moon. But he used to shoot his free throws granny style.
Nice. Just like Jackie Moon.
Not as flamboyantly as Jackie. He didn't do all the kisses and the bounces and the squats over a camera. But he used to shoot his free throws underhanded. So that is the main reason I've picked Rick Barry for my Jackie Moon comparison.
Nice. I love that. One of my favourite scenes in the movie with the kisses. And he never misses a free throw, Jackie Moon. So I like it. Why don't we go on to maybe the other main movie star in the lineup, Ed Monic, who they get in a trade for a washing machine midway through the season. Why don't you go first? Tell me who your Ed Monic's comparison is.
So my Ed Monic comparison is Canada's own Steve Nash.
We got a tie. We've got a match.
Do you know what swung it for me? I wonder if it's the same for you. Coach? No, it's the hair.
Yeah, the hair was up there as well. The old hair was very similar, wasn't it?
The Steve Nash sort of Suns era hair. He's the leader of a team. He's the point guard. Like you said, he's become a coach. He fits this Ed Monic role just pinpoint, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah. So I wrote down he's a small pass first point guard who isn't afraid to go at bigger guys like Steve Nash and Ed Monic were known for. Becomes a head coach. And also is amidst a big trade that tries to swing a big moment for a big team with the Tropics. And when the Lakers got Nash, I would kind of compared the two as well. So, yeah, I think that's our first tie. I'm surprised we did tie, but yeah, maybe it's a good comparison if we both thought of it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think with the trade to the Lakers, I think the Lakers got the washing machine rather than actually getting the player. But Steve Nash posted something recently, and he's like, here's my best highlight as a Laker, and it's him just in one of the timeouts doing keepy-ups with the ball. Very good.
You just got to remember, everybody love everybody. That's the rule.
Everybody love everybody.
Cool. Well, let's go on to the third star in the team. Probably the best player. If you watch the movie, he has many nicknames in the film, but he's called Clarence. It's called Coffee Black. His other name is what's his other name? I've forgotten that.
I can't remember. It's the first name he's got. I can't remember because he changes it, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does change it. Sorry, I've got it. Downtown Funky Stuff Malone. So yeah, I'll go first on this one then. This was one that I wanted to get right, so I changed my answer quite a few times. I struggled with a couple of players, but I had loads of comparisons for. But I ended up going with a podcast favourite in Mr. James Harden. I put he's a scorer, which is true for Clarence.
Yeah,
he doesn't pass. He likes to turn down 2-pointers for 3-pointers. In the start of the movie, he kind of runs left to right and shoots a contested 3-pointer over 5 players rather than just take a dunk or a pass for 2. Also, he's late for games and training quite often because he's seen as too good for the team. This is something that happened with James Harden quite a lot in his Rocket days, especially the end. And also, in the movie, Clarence gets traded to the team that he wants to try and become a true NBA player. And James Harden has got the trade that he wants to try and become a true NBA champion. So, yeah, my comparison was Clarence and James Harden, two definitely high-end scorers, but maybe not the best teammates at the start. So, yeah, that's my comparison. Who was yours?
So I think your comparison has more merit behind it than mine does. Mine was real like... I thought of this and thought, this is genius, but actually, yours is way better. But my comparison for downtown Funky Stuff Malone is LeBron James. The standout player on a team by far. He gets traded to a team, although LeBron wasn't traded. He leaves his home team to go to another team and then leaves that team to come back to help them win a Mega Bowl. So I've gone with LeBron simply for the fact that he is a great player. He can do it all. And he leaves the team and comes back to it to help them win.
Nice. Very good. I like it. Cool. Well, let's go on to which player should we do next? Should we do Twiggy next?
Yeah, let's go for Twiggy.
Cool. So why don't you start this one off? Who did you have as your player comparison for Twiggy?
So Twiggy is one of the only white players on the team. He's very young. He's got lovely hair. And he is... What I might do at the end is play the player introductions, because one of my players, you might need to listen to some of the player introduction to know why I've picked him. He is listed at 6'5". So that got me thinking, what current players do we have at 6'5" that are kind of a bit of a standout on their team, maybe a bit of a cult hero at the moment? So my player comparison for Twiggy is Alex Caruso. Now, the only thing I don't like about this matchup is Twiggy has amazing hair and Alex Caruso has none. But apart from that, I think it's a great comparison.
Definite cult hero status for both those teams there with Twiggy and Caruso, for sure.
That was my pick for Twiggy.
I like that one. That's nice. That was very nice. Cool. Well, my comparison, I've gone with an ex-NBA player. This is Steve Nash's ex, but this is the first player who's not still around the NBA in some way. I've gone with another cult hero for the Charlotte Bobcats back in the day. I've gone with Adam Morrison. He's a player that people will hopefully remember for his crazy hair and good 3-point shooting. They basically got the same haircut. They're near enough the same height. And in the movie, Twig makes a couple of nice little drives to the basket and a good sort of mid-range shot. So Adam Morrison was known for his good shooting prowess. So I compared them. But there's also a moment in the film where Twiggy is known for, let's just say, being involved with another player's family member in a certain way. And Adam Morrison has dated 2 ex-fiancés or girlfriends of current NBA players, including Boban's ex-girlfriend. So he's got a little bit of reputation for getting involved maybe with some NBA players' exes. And Twiggy definitely in the movie has a very bad reputation for getting involved with NBA player exes. So that's my player comparison for Twiggy is Mr. Adam Morrison of the Charlotte Bobcats.
That's a great comparison, except Adam Morrison has a horrible moustache for quite a few of his photos.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's got a very much porn star moustache back in his rookie days.
And although he has a reputation, he does have the nickname Twiggy for a particular reason, which, again, if I play the introduction soon, you'll understand why. So, next on the list, I've got Vocaidus.
Yes, my favourite almost player in this film.
He is a centre from Eastern Europe, I believe Lithuania.
That's correct.
Listed at 7'2", although he's definitely not 7'2". He doesn't understand any English, and when he comes onto the court, he is just there to rebound the ball and pass it. He's just a big guy, basically.
Very big.
So, do you want to go with your one first on this one?
Yeah, I've gone with someone who would be close to your heart, actually, as a Cavs LeBron fan. I've gone with Timofey Mozgov for Cleveland Cavaliers. He's a European centre, as we know. I'm not quite sure if he's exactly 7'2", but the idea is he's a big centre. He's a very good rebounder, which gets mentioned in the movie, and so is Mozgov. But the next part's a little bit harsh. He also gets known in the movie for not being the best looking of European centres. And in my humble opinion, Mozgov also fits the banner of not the best looking European centre. So I've gone with Timofey Mozgov, ex-Cavs legend, and I think NBA champion, maybe.
Yes, nice. Well, I don't think you're far off. I think he is 7'1", so that's good in terms of height comparison.
Yeah. Who was yours for Mr. Vocaidus?
My one is what I consider to be a Timberwolves legend. He was struck with injuries towards the end of his quite short career. Who knows? We may see him again. But he was an absolute beast. And to look at, again, more on looks comparisons to Vocaidus, I feel like this is spot on. I've picked Nikola Pekovic from the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's 6'11", and
Serbian, I think, isn't he? So.
Yeah, Montenegro. So he just Google a picture of him, and it just screams Vocaidus. And if you see him play as well,